Solvitur Ambulando, The Adventures of Steve and Dixie by Stephen Breakstone. Copyright 2025. Snippets from my journal. Episode 21, August 24th, 1986, Hennessy, Oklahoma. Walking, 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 walking. I can guess what Dixie's opinion is of Oklahoma. Too many fleas and ticks. Ticks, especially ticks, seem to be bred like cows. After walking, our second most frequent activity is picking ticks off of her. She gets them, I pick them off, she gets totally void of them, then runs into any sort of grass for any reason whatsoever, like to get some water, and she's back to square one. Ticks. It wasn't too bad in our first two states, but that imaginary borderline between Texas and Oklahoma was the turning point. Occasionally, I scratch my head, feel a scab, pick it, and then find it to be a tick. Walking through Oklahoma has had its challenges.
Side note, those who have known me for the last 35 years or so know that I don't consciously kill any living creature, except fleas, ticks, and mosquitoes. I've had more than my share of experience with those buggers. And at the time, Lyme disease didn't seem to be an issue, or I wasn't aware of it. But because of so much experience with all those buggers, I find I've become a bit hardened. Well, at least compared to some. Now, don't get me wrong, I definitely get annoyed by them and I do my best to avoid them for me, Riley, or any of my animals. But I have picked so many ticks off me or one of my pets over the years that at this point, I'm usually pretty unperturbed about it. I remove, I kill, I move on, I enjoy the rest of the day. And while I was thinking and editing this section, I thought about another common annoyance: disgusting smells. Over thousands of miles of road walking, I would randomly, yet consistently, smell death. I have come across almost every dead animal in various stages of decay that one could imagine in North America. And I got so used to the unpleasant odors wafting to me and then through me and me moving past it that I now actually take most unpleasant odors in stride. And as far into some as this might sound, I sometimes find foul aromas an olfactory adventure, even if I prefer it to be a short-lived adventure. But like the bugs, it's become easier for me to just take it all in stride and move on. And I like this aspect of my personality. It's helped me with many challenges in my life. And then I started thinking that these are the less obvious but no less poignant benefits of walking across the country as a young adult.
August 26, 1986, Tuesday, outside of Nash, Oklahoma. The alarm now rings at 6:15. It used to go off at 5:15. And then, finally, after thinking about it for 30 minutes, we now get up at 6:45 and start walking after 7 o'clock. I have the process of feeding Dixie, personal hygiene, taking down the tent, and packing everything up to a science. The walking day usually ends between 7:30 and 8 o'clock p.m. And in between, there is, usually, nothing exciting, something exciting, sometimes something beautiful or wonderful, sometimes we stop to talk to someone boring, and sometimes we stop to talk to somebody interesting. I feel that we experience a full day, moment by moment, of living, of experiencing life, sun up to sundown. I find land, just land, any kind of land, blatant, simple nature, just beautiful. Yet these particular plains stimulate and bore at the same time. In the mountains, or in the valleys, or in the forests or rolling hills, the beauty comes out and smacks you upside the head. You have to be dead to ignore it or to not feel it. The beauty of these plains is also visible, but you do have to work harder to see it sometimes, to sense it. You got to feel it. And of course, the plains of today are not the plains of yesterday. Today, after harvest, it's just all turned up brown earth. It's not very stimulating. But as far as the eye can see, as far as I can see, well, we see America. This is America today. At least a part of it. Because strangely enough, in my mind, I can also picture another very powerful view of an all American picture, my hometown of New York City. Concrete, steel, and glass as far as the eye can see, and sometimes that only means 50 yards or less. Two totally opposite and contradicting views, but both symbolize the reality of America, the foundation of the country. I'm starting to understand that America is more than the people and the land, albeit those are very powerful. There's a feeling of America that comes from just being an American citizen and realizing logically and feeling emotionally that this is all ours and it's all mine. It's all my own backyard. I mean, even if someone is privately owning it and it's not all that accessible, it still feels like your backyard. America is a feeling that grows from being on the land and getting to know and understand the people and, well, just being a part of it.
Side note: my thoughts from 1986 about feeling something special about America, warts and all, and being an American are authentic. And I felt that way long after my journey ended. Unfortunately, I feel it's important to share that I don't think or feel that America is the same these days in 2025, almost 40 years later. Oh, I still love and appreciate America, but there is a different feeling in the air. It's so obvious that I don't feel I need to expand on the thought. And I don't think these feelings are due to a change of perspective because of the loss of my youth or innocence. There's a greater divisiveness today in America. Oh, I'm not saying there wasn't a we versus them issue going on in politics and elsewhere in the 1980s, but not to the extent that exists today. Perhaps back then the differences were just seeds that had not yet sprouted, yet harbored the fruit of things to come. Perhaps because of the 24-hour news cycle or social media, it brought the behaviors to the next level. But we can't just blame technology. I remember thinking that the mudslinging going on in political commercials when I was coming of age in the 1980s, wherever I was in America, was childish, inappropriate, and just all too common. Politicians were behaving in a manner that wouldn't or shouldn't be tolerated in any school. I remember thinking that it was going to get worse before it got better, and I was proof correct, as the mudslinging back then was tamed by today's style of aggressive bullying and unprofessional political tactics and behaviors by so called mature adults. I am disappointed that what I thought was America's value of respectful discourse has been more words than actions. I personally know that America is still full of wonderful and respectful, kind, and charitable people, but somehow we have collectively decided by our votes that our elected officials, people we choose to lead our communities, country, and culture, don't have to sincerely act the way that most people I know want their children to behave. I ponder how I'd feel and think about America if I was 23 years old again and walking across America in the 2020s in a manner similar to my 1980s journey, meaning without cell phones and social media.
Later. Then there are those times we just sit at the side of the road and 10 feet away is a barbed wire fence. Looking at us, looking at them, is a herd of cows. Curiosity and a strange relationship develops. I know, they are just cows, but all we are is just a human and a dog. And we could sit here listening to the mooing for 5 minutes or 5 hours. It just doesn't matter. This is just one of the things that we do. They say that sometimes you have to stop and smell the roses. Well, I do that. And sometimes you have to stop and look at the cows. When you have all the time to do all the things you want to do and all the things you have to do, and you still have time to just sit and look at the cows, then you're doing all right. I guess that means in the big picture, I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay. Hmm.
Side note: I knew then, and know even now, that some people, younger and older, might think that I was wasting or wasted valuable time, life, and opportunity by planning to take a few years to just walk across the country instead of taking advantage of the advantages I had to start a career, make money, and set myself up with security that could last a lifetime and make my parents comfortable with their son's choices. And there's a logic to that thinking. In fact, most people I knew, younger and older, had done that or were trying to do that. Many, although definitely not all, also expressed envy for doing what I was doing. From my perspective, though, I didn't know anyone who did or was doing the traditional thing and really seemed to be enjoying themselves or on the road to personal, physical, or spiritual fulfillment. Oh, I'm not saying that there weren't people who were fulfilled. I just didn't know them. Of course, I wanted a career and financial security and to be part of a happy, healthy community. I just wanted to achieve and earn all those things my way, the fun, challenging, intriguing way, the spiritually fulfilling way, because I wasn't up to the challenge of working 40 to 50 hours a week, plus extra hours each day for a commute and deal with office politics, all for hopefully an ever increasing salary. That was my frame of mind. I didn't think I could do those things. But this challenge, that's the challenge I thought I could face and to ultimately achieve my goals. Now, regrets? I'm 62. Of course I have regrets. But then again, too few to mention. Well, at this age, I've had more than just a few regrets, but still, not too many. And certainly, I have no regrets for investing in myself by taking what I consider a rite of passage. And I have no regrets for taking the time, a lot of time, to watch the cows and the moon rises and the sunsets and God's vistas.
August 28th, 1986, Thursday, between Cherokee and Driftwood, Oklahoma. The weather, she is a changin'. What happened to the heat? I don't know about Dixie, but I froze last night. My body thermostat is set on 85 to 90-degree heat, even through the night. And now that's high, but after 2.5 months, this is normal. But somehow, overnight, the temperature dropped about 40 degrees to about 45 to 50 degrees. Brr. Since day one, I have slept naked with only a bed sheet as a blanket. There were times I even had to kick Dixie and her hot, panting breath out of the tent, if there were no mosquitoes. Last night, I wore multiple shirts, sweatpants, multiple socks, and Dixie. I had to pull Dixie in real tight for warmth. I bet my little furball loved it. And this morning, for the first time, I walked wearing a shirt and sweatpants. Perhaps it's a sign. Tomorrow, we will be in Kansas, and in 3 days, we'll be in Pratt at the junction of Highway 54 that heads us west. I've been thinking about the time when we have to look for work and try to land a farm job. Perhaps the cold weather is telling us that the time has come. Okies have given us a lot of encouragement of a later harvest season in Kansas and all their cattle feed yards. They make me feel I should have no problem finding work. On the other hand, I do not want to set myself up for a major disappointment. And although it's only a few weeks away, well, I'm ready for the end of Walk Part 1. I'm getting bored with the scenery, I think. I hate to admit that not every step is beautiful and wonderful here in Oklahoma, and I'm sure that Kansas will be more of the same. When we start again in the spring, and it's going to be similar up until we actually reach Colorado, that's when I'll have to be prepared for harder territory, colder, steeper roadways, and longer distances between towns.
Side note, I want to point out that this entry expresses a certain trepidation about what life would be like when I no longer had, well, what had become the comfort through repetition of life on the road and walking 11 to 18 miles a day. And also of the ongoing angst at the time for so many Americans, regardless of age, that getting a job was very uncertain. Once again, it was another example of experiencing thoughts and emotions that were so unlike anything I had ever experienced.
Since Enid, Oklahoma, and the tragedy at the post office, we've been on very small country back roads, and I've noticed that no one has offered us any rides. It seems that people of very small towns are more cautious. I think I've received the most hospitality from the towns with populations between 5,000 and 25,000. August 30th, 1986, Saturday. Well, no matter whatever happens in my life, Dixie and I walk from New Orleans, Louisiana to Kansas. Northern Oklahoma raced its way into southern Kansas, and we were in Burlington, Oklahoma yesterday and went to bed beyond Kiowa, Kansas. But it wasn't easy. The 11 miles to the border were not your typical 11 miles. I don't know what they did to them, but it took forever to walk. Maybe I took shorter strides. Maybe I walked slower. Or maybe it was the weight of the fresh garden tomatoes, okra, carrots, and cucumbers I was given by a man who I met in the Burlington Cafe. Or maybe it was the 5-pound soup bowl that he gave me to give to Dixie for supper. Only a good daddy, I told her, would carry such a thing for his dog. Her pack was filled with her usual dry dog food, and I didn't want to add the extra poundage to her back. But I did want her to have the special treat. She walked from New Orleans to Kansas. She deserved it. And I deserved the delicious fresh veggies. We both greatly enjoyed the tasty, refreshing extras. A frightening moment. Camp in Privacy was found by the Medicine River near a railroad track and bridge. The trains were running quite frequently, but I only discovered that after I got the tent all set up. I think the conductors and engineers were all probably taking a supper break when we were setting up and got back to work only after Dixie and I were all situated physically and mentally. At that point, I wasn't planning to decamp and recamp. I'm not even sure I could have moved Dixie if I tried. For a while, I felt like I was back in the Bronx in my building, one block off the elevated rails. What a strange sensation here in Kansas, of all places, to have such a memory of my early Bronx upbringing. The trains here shook the ground so hard I thought the leaves were going to fall off all the trees. Luckily, after a while, they stopped and we were able to get to sleep. It was the middle of the night, moonless and full of stars. I was dreaming the dreams one dreams about after walking all day long and resting to get ready to walk all day long the next day. Then I dreamt of an earthquake. I was shaking. I couldn't control my movements. Lights were shining. I couldn't see. I was blind. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Oh Lord, how could I be so stupid as to go to sleep on a railroad track? I woke and the ground was shaking so hard I couldn't get my bearing, and the sound was so loud I couldn't think, and the headlight of the train was shining right in my eyes. I've read about stories like this. My mother warned me never to walk, let alone sleep on any tracks, no matter if there hasn't been a train coming in years. And well, now this is how my walk across America ends. Traveling man and dog smashed to itsy bitsy pieces after sleeping on the track. And then the light went around us and just barely missed our vulnerable existence. I know, it all sounds a bit hokey, but you try sleeping in a different place, outside, every night, and see if you think straight when you're woken so traumatically. Of course, we didn't sleep on the track. It's just that the track path came toward us, but curved away long before it got anywhere close, obviously. But in the world of dreams and panic in the middle of the night by a river near a train track in southern Kansas, clear thinking is not the first thing that pops up. It was the third or fourth thing. August 31st, 1986, Sunday, Medicine Lodge, Kansas. We walked to town in the drizzle this morning and stopped in a large, packed restaurant bar like place serving breakfast. We met all those patrons hungry after a morning at church. The first thing I did was call home, and Mom told me that Charlotte Stogsdill called. It was exciting for Mom and Dad to get a call from Louisiana and someone I had stayed with. Makes them more involved, and it's a way for them to share in my experience. It was a good call.
For the first time in a long, long time, I've recently been reconnected to Charlotte and her daughters, Teresa and Tanya. Unfortunately, Ben passed away a few years ago. But talking with Charlotte, who's as sweet as ever, it's just always a joy to talk with her. We reminisce, and it's interesting to hear her specific memories of Dixie and me with my dark hair, which she mentions.
After the phone call with the folks, I grabbed a seat at the counter. Outside, I had Dixie resting in a dry spot. The restaurant was filled up and all the seats were occupied. And walking on the road, we're quite visible to the passersby, and today one man who had seen us was sitting just a few seats down. Where are you headed, son? He answered his question with a bit of a laugh. Not an overtly friendly laugh, one that actually caused me to wonder what was on his mind. I just wasn't sure, so I tried to be open minded. My dog and I are walking across the country. We're headed north to Pratt and then we're going to head west. We're also looking for work, preferably on a farm for the winter. I mentioned the job part because, in general, I figured the only way I was going to get what I wanted was to open my big mouth. Sooner or later, I hope to be heard by someone who could help me. Up to Pratt? Why don't you just head west? He turned the heads of the other patrons. Why? What will I find if I keep heading west? Nothing. You can go for miles and miles and not see nothing. You can go for days. Was this guy drunk so early on a Sunday morning? I couldn't figure this out. Physically, he didn't look like he sounded. If I closed my eyes and just listened, I would have pictured a big, burly, beer bellied slob of a man with a torn t shirt and his underwear sticking out. But Lapalong was an average sized man, well dressed and distinguished for his age of about 45 to 50. He looked like a nice fellow you'd want to talk to or do business with. The contradiction was frightening and yet had a drawing effect. Well, then why would I want to walk that way? I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe something worthwhile was on his mind. I was wrong. He just waved his arm and me off. I guess I was no fun. But then a few minutes later, eating my eggs and hash browns, he entered my space again. I guess his mind caught up with what I had said and had a chance to refuel. A job, huh? I got a job for you. Out of curiosity, and because I didn't want to start trouble by just ignoring him, I answered. Also, because I don't need jerks upset with me and my vulnerable state of being on the roads of Kansas. Well, or anywhere USA for that matter. What kind of job? I got a friend who has a resort on the road to Pratt. He needs a caretaker for the winter. Just keep an eye on the place. Is this a paying job? Yeah, you get paid. Room and board, and how about $1 a day? I didn't say anything, but I did think, shut up, a-hole. I was amazed. I mean, I just couldn't figure this out. I was expecting that any minute someone would explain to me what the trick was or where the hidden camera was. He didn't seem like a stranger in the place, yet others gave me the impression that I wasn't the only one disgusted by his obnoxiousness. Yet no one came to my rescue either. The only reason I didn't just get up and leave was, well, curiosity. Was this one of the crazies I had been warned about? I had to let this play out because I just had to experience this. And also, I kind of felt I was safer at that moment, surrounded by a lot of people compared to getting up and leaving and having Dixie and I be slow moving targets by ourselves on the road. This too is a part of meeting diverse people. I admit its appeal was like seeing a tragic accident. It had a drawing power. I admit I was curious to know if he really did have a friend with a job opportunity. It's only my uncertainty of getting any work at all in the next few weeks that made me even contemplate bothering with this breathing, ignoramus at all. Hang around and I'll take him to you and see if you really know how to work. After I eat, I'll take you up in that direction. I finished breakfast and thought about the safest and smartest course of action for me to take in this situation. After 15 minutes of totally ignoring me, though, he got up without even looking over and left. Good riddance.
Side note: having almost 4 decades of life passed since this encounter, I am much more familiar with mental illness and alcohol and substance abuse. But I wasn't then, at all. I was, you could say, intellectually aware of a lot of things, or perhaps book smart, or TV, movie, newspaper, magazine, and maybe academically aware, but actually experiencing these people, crazy but not especially dangerous, was an experience that helped me to develop a greater understanding of human behavior, which actually led me to have experience that led me to an enjoyable career in working with people with developmental disabilities for various social services and as a K-12 educator for the general population. Well, that's it for now. Peace.